Tex Granger, the Midnight Rider of the Plains, is a 15-chapter movie serial that was released by Columbia Pictures in 1948. Robert Keller portrays the title character, Tex Granger.
My name's Tex Granger. What's yours?
Jim.
Jimmy, I'm glad to know you.
In the film, Granger discovers a young lad named Jimmy, played by Buzz Henry, who is protecting a gold shipment after a holdup from some of the villains of the piece, Blaze Talbot and the bandit Reno. Once Granger arrives in the small town of Three Buttes, he is persuaded by town loan shark Rance Carson to become the owner of the local newspaper. Helen Kent, played by Peggy Stewart, soon joins Tex as the assistant editor of the New Frontier newspaper.
You're the assistant editor?
Well, why not? Yeah, I sure wish I was driving.
That ain't no job for a woman.
This is juxtaposed with Blaze Talbot, newly appointed to the position of town marshal by the nefarious town overseer Rance Carson.
Someone ought to offer a reward for Carson, dead or alive, preferably dead.
Carson's intention is to have Talbot as his local attack dog, but of course villains will be villains, and soon enough the two partners are backstabbing each other to see who will be at the top spot. The inner squabbles of the outlaws, led by Reno, along with their thieving henchmen clashing with the angry vigilante residents of Three Buttes, create such havoc in the town that it forces Granger to don a mask to become a vigilante himself and bring the criminals to justice.
Well, hold on there. You haven't got the proper respect for the law.
You're wrong, I have. But some of the representatives of the law I have no respect for.
The townsfolk and outlaws call Tex the Night Rider, or Masked Rider, when he's in disguise. The setup for this serial kind of reminds me of how newspaper publisher Britt Reed is also the crime fighter known as the Green Hornet, but the plot is more or less stolen from the 1926 novel The Last Frontier by Courtney Riley Cooper. The novel would go on to become a silent film which actually featured Billy Batson himself, or the very young Frank Coughlin Jr., as well as becoming a film serial from RKO Pictures in 1932 that stars Lon Chaney Jr. as the crime fighter The Black Ghost, who is probably most famous to fans of movie monsters for his portrayal of the Wolfman.
Well, let's quit this gammon and get to it.
All right.
The Last Frontier film serial was also edited together into a feature film version simply titled The Black Ghost. Tex Granger first appears in the pages of Calling All Boys No. 10 in 1947 and was created by artist Lawrence F. Bjorklund. Tex Granger eventually went from being a backup story in Parents Magazine Institute's Calling All Boys to becoming the lead story, which eventually led to the comic book title being altered to Tex Granger itself by issue 18 by June of 1948. In the comics, Tex Granger starts out the same as a drifter who would tackle on crime and corruption, but eventually, in the comics, he would become the sheriff of a small Arizona frontier town where he would face off against other real-life historical personalities of the era, such as Billy the Kid.
Yoo-hoo! I'll make you
The
famous.
serial is actually not half bad, with a lot of decent twists and turns. Tex Granger doesn't try to overreach past the boundaries of the limited Katzman budget, so instead of being a half-assed World War II epic or a poor excuse for an exciting aviation flick like some other movie serials, it just comes across as a straight-up cowboy frontier piece.
Don't get gay with the law, young fella, or I'll have to lock you up.
Though it does seem a little silly to put a character like Tex Granger into a masked crime-fighting identity. Kinda like if you put a devil mask on John Constantine and everybody he magicked out ended up calling him the Hellblazer.
He's as smart as he is crooked. Nobody can prove nothing.
Rance Carson comes across as the post-Man of Steel Lex Luthor in this small town on the western frontier, and Tex Granger is kind of like his Clark Kent, with Jimmy as Jimmy Olsen and Helen as Lois, constantly getting into trouble when the Masked Rider or Superman has to bail them out.
Any vigilante organization is a form of taking the law into your own hands. And that can be as bad as the evil it is trying to correct.
Also in this piece, the whole usual mystery villain motif is turned on its head, and Masked Rider is the mystery hero in this case. It's still painfully obvious who the writer is, but it was an interesting twist in terms of film serial formula.
I stand for everything you don't. Two of them are law and order.
The highlight of this piece, though, has to be the Kent dog, whose name is Duke. Duke the dog is pretty flippin' awesome, pulling all sorts of badass Lassie and Old Yeller shit before their time.
I did.
Hush, Duke, hush.
I think he's trying to tell us something. What is it, Duke?
Duke's trying to tell us that those men went in there.
Like here, for instance, when he tracks down two of Reno's men that Blaze hires to plant some dynamite in the newspaper press. They try to shoot the dog down, those dirty sons of bitches, but check this out! Duke the dog is faking like a dead Ewok. Greatest dog ever!
That got him.
Here's that dog again. He followed us from the Paradise.
What about it?
We figure he's been tagging us ever since we left the newspaper office.
Smart dog.
Well, he won't be for long.
Hold on. Townspeople like that dog, and you couldn't give a reason for shooting him.
But he's wise to us, Blaze.
Anyway, I like this serial a lot, and especially Duke the dog, so give this one a watch if you get a chance.
Oh, Susanna, won't you cry for me? I come from Alabama with the banjo on my knee. Oh, Susanna, won't you cry for me? I come from Alabama with the banjo on